The Battle of Waterloo was fought on the 18th of June 1815 at Mont Saint-Jean, 2 kilometres south of the Belgian village of Waterloo, from whence it gets its name. The battlefield, seen here today, is largely as it was on the day, with the farms of Hougoumont and La Haye-Saint still standing strong in the valley. However, a large lion mound monument has been erected on the north side of the valley, altering the Allied ridge. At the start of the day, French forces commanded by Napoleon Bonaparte, totalling approximately 77,000 men, were amassed on the south side of the gently sloping valley. Opposite them, the British Allied Army, commanded by Arthur Wellesley, the 1st Duke of Wellington, totalling approximately 68,000 men, many of whom were hidden behind a fold in the landscape, a trademark tactic of the Duke. Away from the field, the Prussian army, commanded by Gebhard von Blücher of around 50,000 men, were rapidly marching east in a bid to get to the battlefield. The battle is known for many events. The solid defence of Hougoumont by the British Guards, the heroic but ill-fated charge by the Scots Greys, immortalised in a painting by Elizabeth Thompson, the brave but foolhardy, unsupported French cavalry charges against unbreakable British infantry squares, and finally the timely arrival of the Prussian army under Blücher to finally rout Napoleon and his army from the battlefield. The battle is a full stop in the course of history. It abruptly stopped French imperialism and marked the rapid acceleration in the rise of the British Empire. Thousands of books have been written, hundreds of films and documentaries made. The battle is studied in detail at military academies such as Sandhurst and West Point. Not so sure about the L'École Militaire in Paris, but possibly studied there too. The British Parliament was understandably delighted by the victory and voted that a medal should be struck and awarded to all those who took part in the campaign. The Duke of Wellington supported the idea and suggested that all the officers and men should receive the same medal, and even recommended the colours to be used on the ribbon. An announcement was made in the London Gazette on the 23rd of April 1816 that every officer, non-commissioned officer and soldier of the British Army who took part in the Battle of Waterloo and the preceding battles of Ligny and Quatre Bras should receive the medal. The ribbon, as proposed by the Duke, is crimson with blue edges. It is 38 millimetres wide. The medal is suspended from the ribbon by a split ring and a clip. These two items were made of iron, and many were replaced with silver so as not to rust and spoil the wearer's uniform. Originally proposed to be made from bronze, the discs are made from fine silver. They are 37 millimetres in diameter and 4 millimetres thick. The obverse, or front, depicts a left-facing profile of the Prince Regent, the future George IV. The inscription George P. Regent runs around the rim. Under the bust is the name T. Wyon, the chief engraver at the Mint and the designer of the medal. The reverse, or back, is based on an ancient Greek coin held in the British Museum. It features at the top the name of Wellington, beneath which is the figure of victory seated on a plinth bearing the word Waterloo. Beneath that is the date of the battle, June the 18th, 1815. And at the very bottom, in tiny letters, Thomas Wyon has again printed his name. A unique feature of the medal at the time of its minting is that around the edge is impressed the name, rank and regiment of the recipient. A machine for doing so only having been recently invented by 2 employees of the Mint. Any vacant space at the beginning and end of the name is filled with decorative stars. The medal has huge significance in the history of the British Army. Despite hundreds of years' service fighting the nation's enemies, usually France, this was the first time it had been deemed important enough to award a medal to every man from the Duke down to the drummer boys for their service on the battlefield. The practice of doing so, common in European armies, had been considered beneath the pride of the British Army. The medal was distributed to the recipients throughout 1816 and 1817. Each man was also credited with 2 years extra service and pay to count for pension and seniority. Henceforth, they were all to be known as Waterloo men. The example in our collection was awarded to John Grant of the Royal Artillery Drivers. Unfortunately, the O of John is somewhat worn away. Records can be a bit vague, and we have not been able to find out very much about John Grant other than that he enlisted in June of 1811 and at the time of Waterloo had been promoted to corporal. On the day, he fought in Major Turner's A Troop. He and his troop would have been responsible for the moving up of ammunitions and supplies to the batteries and looking after the horses used to pull the guns. Although not in the thick of the fighting, he and his team were nonetheless a vital part of the army. We believe that a total of 37,638 medals were produced. How many individuals received it was unclear. Some received duplicates, and it is thought that the Duke of Wellington had at least 4. Some name medals were returned to the Mint as undeserved or incorrect, and the Mint was still issuing medals up to 10 years after the original distribution. With the introduction of photography in the mid-1800s, there are many images of these old soldiers, such as this one taken at the Chelsea Hospital in 1880. The men well into their 80s and 90s are proudly posing with the medal awarded 65 years previously. Today, many of the medals have been lost or melted down for their scrap value, but in collections and museums all over the world, these wonderful antiques can still be seen and admired. Records are being compiled of medals that are still in existence, and it is estimated that about 15 to 20% still survive. If you have one in your family's heirlooms, please consider adding yours to the list at the website britishmedalforum.com. Genealogists compiling their family trees can check on the online medal roll to see if an ancestor was present at the battle. And websites such as Find My Past and Ancestry.com can sometimes provide military service records. You never know, you may be the descendant of a Waterloo man. As this was the first medal to be awarded to British troops on a battlefield, it is only the beginning of the British campaign medal story. We hope you found it interesting, and if so, take a look at our next video in which we will show you the second medal to be awarded for a much quieter affair and far away from the traditional battlefields of Europe.